Hello and welcome to Pellicar. This is Nuts and Bolts, Episode 2, the show where we talk about the ins and outs, the physics, the history, and all the non-story stuff from Dresden's Tale. Last time around, we talked about the Rite of Strength. We talked about what role bards play in the Keld society. This time around, we're going to talk about the Valitto, the noble races, what species make up the world. Every fantasy world has some of the usual stuff, and a lot of that is in common with Pellicar. From many traditions, you have, humans and elves and dwarves and all that kind of fun stuff. We have it right here too, as well as a few of our own unique ones. We're going to do this top 10 style. I figure there's about 20 significant levelable species on Pellicar. Part of the story. Some of them aren't seen for a while into the texts, but some of them come in right away. A few are clearly belonging among the top 10. The A-tier species, so to speak. When you get into the B tier, it gets a little bit more fuzzy. So I chose to look at a couple of attributes more specifically than others for this list. First is survivability in a warrior culture as an individual. Do you have the ability to jump right in and be recognized for your fighting prowess, whether it be through strength, stamina, or some other attribute, all of which we will cover here when we get going. The second is numbers. Does the species have enough population that they are assured a place in society? After all, if I'm a member of a species that is an awesome fighter, a great warrior, I can be smart as I want to be, I can be tough as I want to be, but if I can't pass on my skills from generation to generation to new children as a part of my species isn't going to make it. A couple of quick notes. First, I want to make it clear that when I say warrior, I don't just mean your traditional sword and shield fighter. I'm talking about anyone brave enough to go out and do battle as a member of the clan. I'm talking about the priests, the warlocks. Now, the culture does have a bit of a bias against mages as far as pure spellcasters go in that regard, but they are still considered warriors. I also want to make note that melee battle, sword, shields, getting in there and mixing it up is highly favored over safer means of doing battle and conveying damage. Certainly there are bows and crossbows and ranged spellfire used by the Kelds. However, the heroes, the most revered, are those that get in there face to face, toe to toe with the enemy. That said, let's jump in there with number 10. Now, they are not particularly strong and they are not particularly stout, but I'm still going to get yelled at for not having them higher on the list. I can hear the complaints coming already. Number 10, we have elves. Now, quite frankly, the only reason they're on the top 10 list at all is because, they're elves. They're long-lived. They're going to be around for a while. They are slow breeders, but the upside is that 300 years down the line, that elf has had a whole lot of time to adventure. And with all the elf lovers out there and the fact that they appear in pretty much every single fantasy setting in existence, ever conceived of, ever thought of, I can't really, in good faith, leave them out. Now, Pellicar elves are pretty mundane compared to some. They don't have any inherent magical abilities. They are biological creatures, very, very similar to humans. They are a little smarter than most species. They are a little bit more agile than most species. But once again, their greatest advantage is that they are extremely long-lived. Number 9, we're going to go with mountain folk. Mountain folk are a tall humanoid species, shaggy legs, very sure-footed. They have climbing bonuses as far as mountain settings go. They are more agile than most species, getting a bonus there. They're more aware. Their senses are a little bit more acute than most species. Other than that, they don't have any significant penalties or modifiers. There is a fair population, especially in mountain terrains, of Muldav, and they don't have any big breeding penalties. Children are fairly survivable. I don't like to set anything in stone, but the species is pretty much etched out a place among Keld cultures. Number 8, we're going to go with the Ranayan. You'll see the spelling on your screen there. They're an amphibious humanoid race. I will use the word race and species intermingled a little bit, although I think species is much more technically correct. The Ranayan can breathe underwater. They're excellent swimmers. They gain bonuses in awareness, in strength, and in stamina. They don't have a lot of setbacks. They're a very solid species. Their biggest negative, they are slow breeders. Their children are essentially born as little tadpoles, and often it takes up to 3 pregnancies for a female to have a child that lives. Obviously, that can be changed. Very successful warriors can afford the kind of health care that will improve their chances. But for the rank and file, the species as a whole, they do not expand particularly quickly. Just another note here. I do want to say that all this middle of the road, basically number 4 through number 9, could all be pretty much mixed up in any order. They're not intentionally made for one to be stronger or weaker than the other. There's some degree of balance between the species. So a lot of this is just going to be whatever characters you latch onto, whatever strikes your fancy. Number 7, we're going to put the Saurians in here. These fellows are big old beasts of warriors. They're kind of like little dinosaurs. Big, strong, hefty legs, leaned forward with a tail for a counterbalance. They are tall. They are heavy. They have attributes that give bonuses in all the physicalities. They're strong, they're stocky, they have good endurance. Their reflexes are pretty good, along with because of that tail keeping them going. However, they do have their drawbacks as well. Their biggest one being that they aren't real bright. As a species, they would have a hard time making it on their own, just because they do have that significant penalty there. They are also a little bit easily shell-shocked. Sanity is an attribute in the Pelokar system, and so extended periods of stress will get to them more than most species. They are also good swimmers. They don't have any significant breeding problems. They are a very solid species. Another big drawback, though, with the Saurians, and this is another factor I've kind of countered in to the whole list, is mobility. They are big enough that the standard means of magical travel It's very difficult for them to be moved about. And anybody that's done any significant amount of role playing or writing or reading in a fantasy setting, you know that magical transportation is a big deal as a tactical advantage in battle, or just getting along as an adventuring team. Number 6. We're going to go with dwarves here. Maybe one of the reasons I put them this high is because our hero is a dwarf. They are certainly deserving of being in the top 10, though. They are extremely robust, very healthy little dwarves. And I do always have a habit of calling them little, don't I? I seem to always be wanting to point that out. They aren't particularly good looking by most standards. They aren't particularly agile by most standards, but they are very healthy. They have extra resistances against poisons and alchemical things, both good and bad, and that gets more and more pronounced as they age. And that brings us to number 5, the Equirda. Now, an Equirda is essentially a centaur based on a deer. Much smaller build than a big old centaur. They are very agile, very quick on their feet. And that is what has allowed them to make this list and make it so high. They are an extremely survivable species. They are small enough to be easily transportable by magic. They are quick enough to be able to escape a battle gone bad. The only thing that really hurts them in the Keld society is that range attacks are so looked down on. In a culture where it was smiled upon to be an army of bow-wielding Equirda, then certainly that army would be very prolific. They also exist in significant numbers and have no breeding penalties. So as a survivable species as a whole, they are not, dependent upon a few heroes, although there certainly are heroes among the Equirda. The second chief of the Stone Clan was actually an Equirda. And we're going to do number 4. Number 4 is the last of what I would consider the B tier species, right before we get into the top 3 uncontested A tier. Number 4 is the Monkey. As you could immediately guess, the Monkey are a simian species. They do very well in trees. They have climbing bonuses. They can brachiate, travel in Tarzan style. Their biggest penalty is they not only have a poor stamina, but they actually attract disease energies. They are a longer-lived species, not as long as the elves, but certainly longer than humans and most of the races. They gain a bonus to their mentality and to their strength and to their reflexes. They are a very solid species, and there are a lot of monkey heroes among the Kelds. Number 3, getting into the A tier. You've seen some amphibians, you've seen some lizards, you've seen some monkeys. Now we're going to get the cats. That's right. Everybody from loves the Khajiit of Skyrim or many of the other cat-like warriors. This is it, the Tagara. They are a very successful species on Muldav. You're going to see a lot of Tagaran characters over time. They are strong and they are agile. The only real drawback is they can be a little bit flaky. They have that sanity penalty, but it's not a big one. They are quick. They are able to drop down on all fours and run faster than most species. They can really only be outrun by the Equirda. at least out of species on this list. And there are lots of them. They are very populated species on Muldav, as well as the other planes that the Kelds have contact with. A lot of different ethnic groups, which I'm not going to get into the ethnic groups today just because of time, and also it'll give me something to talk about when we get into the individual species, more of a spotlight. Number 2, we are going to go with humans. That's right, they're everywhere. They're here too. Humans are so high on the list because there are a lot of them. Same as the Tagara, they're great breeders. They exist in large numbers, but they also get a very flexible variety of bonuses. Essentially, from a pure nuts and bolts standpoint, you can move your bonuses around pretty much however you want to, giving up a few points here to add a few points there. So you have humans that are extremely strong, you have humans that are extremely smart, you have humans that are extremely agile, or for those lucky ones that just have a whole lot of high attributes to start with. Some of your greatest physical specimens are in fact humans. And now, what you've all been waiting for, number 1, what could it possibly be? Well, it is a species that is not exclusive to Pellicar, but one that most systems do not allow to be a levelable species, or not common in society. We have the Minotaur. These guys are strong, they are stout, and they have powerful physical attacks. If you took just 100 random Minotaur farmers up against 100 random of any other species, the Minotaur are going to, at the very least, be able to hold the ground, even if their opponents, the best they might be able to do would be to escape. They have strong pugilistic attacks, as well as a devastating headbutt. Rank and file Minotaur have a significant advantage over their opponents. And there are enough of them around that they're not in any danger of being outbred or left behind. They don't have any significant penalties in that regard. They are definitely a species that the Keld Empire is built around. A very warrioristic, a very combat-capable species. So, that wraps it up for this episode of Nuts and Bolts. There are plenty of other species for us to talk about, and there's certainly more detail we can go into. That'll happen as the story progresses. Sometimes in the story itself, Dresden will do a little elaboration on what's going on with the different species, and certainly you will learn a lot about dwarves. I want to thank you all very much for being here. You could have done anything with this little bit of time, but you chose to spend it with me, and I appreciate that very much. And if you could, please do all the things, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and we will see you next time.